Okay, so I did that to give you an idea of what kind of a building that this is. As you can see, it's got a lot of wood. It's a building that belongs to the 20th century. It's got a feeling of rather medicalised corridors. And when they make shows here, they like you to deal with the building, not to cover it up. When Pussy Riot were here, they completely covered up this gallery and painted it all red. But that was an exception. Otherwise, you're dealing with the fabric of Edinburgh. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about this show. Dealing with the actual fabric of Edinburgh. The stuff, the wood you've got to touch. So here we come. And you can see this room. That it was a gallery, it was a war memorial gallery. That it had wood panelling, these strange sarcophagus cases. So, my first thought at the top was we've got one war hero here, who is, of course, this chap. That's Harry White. That's the photo from which that's taken, and that's a little brief biography of Harry White. So, in a way, Harry White is the one that allows us to be in a war memorial gallery at all. So I'm going back to using the place itself, what its original function was, to celebrate heroes of the war, and finding one person who belongs among those people but would never be acknowledged. He was a coder on Arctic convoys during the Second World War. And he was a coder on Arctic convoys during the Second World War because he wanted to get back to Russia. Because his first great love, another man, had been in Moscow. And that man had been arrested when Stalin recriminalized homosexuality, and he had complained to Stalin. So this is his complaint here. This is the text of the letter that you can find on the internet. Now, I just put these boring things here so that you can see how I use the text to lift particular phrases out. You see, the masses are not intolerant of homosexuals. Or this one, which is particularly good. The fact that I'm homosexual in no way diminishes my value as a revolutionary. So this is really addressing itself to people who would be interested in text, because up there I've put his words, the fact that I am homosexual in no way diminishes my value as a revolutionary. I think that's just a wonderful, it just shows in a way the great kind of rhetoric that can come with that dialectical thinking, Marxist thinking, particularly relative to social minorities, sexual minorities. So, here are Harry White's peers, gay men from the 30s, all of whom are arrested. And these are police photographs. And these men are here, along with their stories. The little that's known of them. And this is all from the marvellous research done by Dr. Jeff Meek. Now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This window is the video vitrine. This is where Tomek was, so this is where Tomek is introduced, if it continues to play messages from Tomek.
But now the Polish government has locked down Poland. It's an expression of the ultra-nationalism. But we instead, let's celebrate queer hospitality, queer cosmopolitanism, queer democracy. Let's be together
But as it's developed into something else, something more significant. The possibility to speak from a prison cell into a public art space. Okay? And to speak alongside others. So it was good because it was a sort of visual way of showing actual parallel lives, the way the present and the past are actually parallel, the way the revolutionary and the working class man is actually parallel. Quite interesting. It was very difficult. I've never seen anyone use these shelves before, but thinking about them as iPhone screens was quite a good idea, I think, so that it looks like these guys are leaving us iPhone messages and selfies from the 1930s, and then, of course, Tomek is leaving a self-incriminating message. Now, this screen might develop. It might become more than what it is. It might become a place for many people to speak about their experience of isolation. That's what I want. Here is the theory, as best I could put it, that we exchanged about what this show is. This was something I wrote in a text to Tomek, and this was his reply to me. A text that he'd written before. I think it's very good. It's about the fact that you experience being born again in activism. And his own capacity to act, his own decision to act against Charnak, I think is part of that being born again. You know, it's been remarkable what's been born, what connections have been remade, what clarity has been brought to so many issues, relationships, questions of state power by virtue of his choice. Here is another parallel life. This is Harry White in a long scroll with some documents, and beside it, this is Tomek in a long scroll with documents. Harry White is a very interesting life because his most radical act, the letter, doesn't appear at all in his MI6 records, which are where I got all the details of his life from. So, kind of absurd. There are various nasty homophobic reports on him from various ghastly fucking secret agents, whether that's in Tunisia or in London or in Moscow. This is the book that Tomek and I wrote together, Parallel Lines, which in a way marks the initiation of the idea that holds together this exhibition and makes it more than just an exhibition of paintings and drawings, that makes it about this idea that parallel lives are the lives that we might have lived, the lives that minorities live, the lives that the other lives. A good metaphor for a diverse society. So, okay, let's look at the rest of the room. The rest of the room is, I suppose, intended to be a surprising place for the mind, for the eye, and for the heart. The last place you'd expect to find these kinds of messages and these kinds of feelings. And by virtue of the very contrast to the fabric of the building, because to me this represents the homophobic scientific establishment of Edinburgh. By virtue of that very contrast, I think that's how the show works. The show makes a kind of a magical temporary space of tenderness and gentleness and the chance to look at our own humanity. It's doing it through art, so Andrew's idea was that I had to include the drawings. This was the first drawing, which came from imagination. It was an imagined moment of like men intimate together. This is the moment in which I reacted to a therapist saying to me, what can I do about homophobia in Scotland? I thought, I should show what homophobes fear. I should show the intimacy and the tenderness that they fear. Now these men possibly also fear it too. But this was a thought, and it's like almost like some kind of Renaissance-y drawing, isn't it? Strange sort of mixture of men. And then I asked 4 men to sit, so then began the actual observation from life of these people. Now these are very interesting drawings. A lot was destroyed, found and abandoned en route to the painting. This, for example, was the moment that Richard sat with us, this chap Richard, and this was being sat, Matt was sitting here, not Jake, who's in the painting. And this wasn't Steph, this was Ken sitting in here. But in this moment, when I was studying these heads and how these heads go together, it was this story, Richard's story of working in the Terence Higgins Trust, buddying 2 guys who died. I think it entered this drawing. I think this is part of my own exploration of men, gay men, their experiences, and in a way a visual rendition of it. This was the first time Jake sat, and this wasn't, with Steph, who's in the painting. Jake looked at that and said, well, if I thought I looked like that, then I would. And I don't know, it was a curious moment for Jake of seeing himself drawn for the first time. It was kind of an important part of the emotional adventure. This is the part, I think, particularly that the man, Andrew Brown, who curated the show, likes, these touching. 2 left legs, study of 2 left legs. You can see how many things developed. This hand, for example, is not like the hand in the painting, it belonged to another man, but the opportunity of studying a hand in this position doing that was very interesting about the relationship between these men within the map of their intimacy. Same as the difference between this hand and this hand. Jake had very large hands. Very large hands. So it's an opportunity to look at a painting. I'd never painted a thing like that. I was interested in isolating the men, in allowing them just the weight of their bodies to bring them across. It's important that this isn't black, this is brown, like the back of one of those Rayburn's classic Edinburgh portraiture, but the kind of image that they would never have considered doing. These 4 men never actually sat together. They only sit together in this image. There were actually 5 people who sat too, because the central figure could only be there infrequently. I think very important is the relationship between men who are over 50. In fact, he's my age, he's 52, but the other 2 are over 60, and this younger man who's 23, I think.
Hello from uncharacteristically sunny Melbourne in Australia. Congratulations, Angus. It was really exciting to be a part of this work, and it's even more exciting to now see it find a context to live in and get out there into the world so people can experience it. What interesting times we are going through right now. I think as queer people, it's one of our biggest strengths is our sense of community, and it's going to be really challenging for us to get through this crisis without losing that. We're not able to go to bathhouses, we're not able to go to clubs and events and be a part of our community right now. And it's really important that we're really aware of that and we do all that we can to make sure we don't lose that strength in community. I really feel for people who are disconnected at the moment, who are maybe living with unsupportive or homophobic relatives, or in unstable housing situations. On the bright side, it's really good to see that the cracks in society are starting to show, and it's becoming clearer and clearer just how broken the system was.
When I was thrown into this gallery from a smaller gallery, it seemed to me that we needed a larger, more paintings. A lot of things changed. Because this room is square, it changed the way the words went up. But mostly I needed another painting. So this was an image that I had noted. These two guys sitting together. This is the man who also sat for the painting of the four men, but whose face I painted out. He was kind of sitting in as a help for Jake, because Jake could often not make it. But I noticed the way these two sat together, and I said, I'd love to paint that one day. So they came round to my house and we painted it. It's a strange painting. It's a rougher, more painterly painting, I think. It's also somehow more genuinely, it's not in that sort of moment of drama of this kind of poised moment of drama, this sort of slightly formal thing. This is more somehow two men on a settee. It's very interesting to paint it at home. Again, the drawings are kind of intriguing. This was a very important drawing, finding in a way the lean of the body. And this was also a very important drawing with its strange grotesquerie. Making these allow the drawing to stay extremely free, but as far as possible life-size, while I try to find the composition. And the painting's okay, and I think it's okay. Some people really like it. Maybe it's worth having a look close. Now you remember that one of the phrases of Harry White was, the masses are not intolerant of homosexuals. So these are the words that are up there. The masses are not intolerant. Now I put this word intolerant over the door to show in a way the difference between this room and the outside. This room is a place where intolerance is not tolerated. This is a room of tolerance, hyper-tolerance, extreme tolerance. But outside there, it must be said, is intolerant. So this room is a haven for war heroes, for people brave enough to sit for me, for revolutionaries, hopefully for the whole world, you know. It's an attempt to define an art space as a kind of safe space, as a haven, in which there can be a balance, artistically for me, between drawing, painting, thinking, and activism. So this was a crucial part of the show, writing about it for the Morning Star. It's great to write for the Morning Star because the Morning Star allows you to develop a political argument. So very important in this is this question: what is the political significance of organised homophobia? Allowing people to get more than just a queer art perspective, but a political perspective, a social perspective. And this is the letter which Tomasz and I first wrote together for the Star, protesting about the far-right agenda under which was penetrating the university. This is also the Polish translation Tomasz made of our book. This is the moment that we first met. This is me, that's Tomek, talking to Tadeusz Konwicki in the Riviera Remont Club in Warsaw. And this is the show that I made when I got back from Poland. It's important because it's parallel lines. 3rd of May to the 1st of June. And I hope that our show will reopen, in fact open for the first time, exactly 30 years later.